Every day, people use Cisco U to bridge the gap between where they are and where they want to be. Welcome to the Cisco Learning Network. Let us walk you through some of the powerful features available to the community. The personalized homepage is focused on featuring the content you follow and engage with on a daily basis, as well as the valuable learning resources offered to support you in your learning journey. The training videos section quickly helps you find IT training videos on a variety of technology topics to help you in your Cisco certification studies. Find listings for live IT training webinars and events that you can attend in person. Learn on the go and stay a part of the community wherever you are with a mobile-friendly experience. Your community hub allows you to easily ask questions, share ideas, and connect with other members as you prepare for your certification exams. Sign up for upcoming live technical webinars by checking our latest events listings for continuous lifelong learning. Let us be your resource, guide, and community as you continue your career journey. The Cisco Learning Network, your lifelong learning IT community.
So what are some of these benefits of certification? We talked about, is IT right for you? Is this the kind of thing that you're getting into? But once you're in, why would you get certified? So you could learn the technology perhaps without getting certified, but why do you want to be certified? And we're going to go through a lot of these things in the slides coming up, and you're going to see how some of these words in this big word cloud here kind of fit in and really spell out that value for certification. But a lot of times it is show me the money. It's coming back to how exactly is this really going to benefit me? And just to let you know that the average US network engineer has a salary increase of 15% with certification. That's always going to vary, obviously, but that certified individual, and we'll see why, we'll talk about why in a few slides here, that certified individual does bring a lot of gravitas, and there is a need for that person, especially that person who is truly passionate and who's truly on that lifelong learning journey. And that is why certification is so valuable to employers and thus to us, the individuals. And that brings us to confidence. Once you have that knowledge, you're confident in when someone asks for your opinion, when someone comes to you and says, what is the best way? Or in your opinion, how do you think we should solve this? Or what solution should we go for? Or what technology should we use in this particular area? Your answer with that certification, with that credential, brings you exude that confidence, and you can say, well, in my certified and my expert opinion or my professional opinion, this is what we should do and this is why. And you can bring that why over there, and then people look to you to say, I trust this person, I will use them, they've brought me good answers in the past, they clearly know what they're talking about, they're a key and critical member to our team. And then there's that value. It is that 360-degree value that's not just about what it does for you, because if it's giving you knowledge and it's giving you confidence, when you're in that interview, when you're doing that job, when you're putting out that metaphorical fire in the data center, you are more attractive to your organization, your knowledge, your skills, you're delivering instant value, which your employer says, this is fantastic. This person is someone who I can count on to deliver when we're tactically, when we're reactive. And I can also count on this person to be more forward thinking, more of a technologist. They bring up ideas, they bring up thoughts of how we can do things differently in our organization, how we can better use technology. And then no matter what organization, what company you're in, you have someone, some group of customers, some group of stakeholders, be it they're internal or they're external, and you bring value to them because you understand what they need, what they're going through, and how technology can be used to better improve that. So you're able to say, you know what, this is a challenge that our customers or users, let's use the word users, are seeing. This is how we might better improve that. That again goes back into that cycle, into that 360 degrees, where it's giving you, giving your employer back that value because maybe now they're more competitive, they're making more money, they're delighting their customers. And then that's back to you because you look good in doing that. And that could lead to bonuses, lead to promotion, and that kind of thing. And something I want to point out, and I mentioned it before, that lifelong learning. We don't want to look at certification as the end of our journey. We don't want to say, you know what, I got certified, I'm good. We should always be learning. And that's one of the things about IT. I've been at Cisco now just over 23 years. I've liked this area of technology around operations, like network operations, including automation, programmability of networks. And that didn't really exist when I started. So certainly network operations existed, and we were using technologies like Telnet and SNMP and then SSH to kind of manage these devices. But we were doing it all very manually. We were connecting to device by device. And operations has greatly improved, or I would say innovated and transformed with this idea of net DevOps, or the bringing in of automation, bringing in of programmability into this. So even something as kind of basic as network operations has transformed over the years, and we're always seeing that this industry is always going to be changing. So if you like that change, if you like being part of this kind of forefront of how we are as a society are doing a lot of things now, this is the place for you. And you do have this opportunity to always be learning as you go, always be taking on those new skills. And Cisco, as part of our certification program, we have a program called Continuing Education that as you learn those new skills, you keep your certifications current, so you never lose that credential that's so valuable to you. So I hope you enjoyed this brief introduction to Cisco certifications. There's a lot more to come. You're on a fantastic journey. And I think if you're that person who likes being that agent of change, who likes solving those tough problems, who likes thinking like a detective, and who likes interconnecting people and things, you are absolutely in the right place. Thanks. I look forward to talking to you as a certified individual soon.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Rigo Villa. I'm one of the community managers on the Cisco Learning Network, and I'll be your host today. In this session, we're going to be covering ICE Data Connect Deep Dive with our speaker and presenter, Thomas Howard. But before we get started, I wanted to share a couple of quick housekeeping notes. First, I want to let our attendees know that this session is being recorded and will be available on demand within approximately 5 business days after today. Next, I would like to take a moment to address Q&A and poll questions. We are going to be using Slido for any and all questions during the live event, so please feel free to submit your inquiries in Slido, and one of our amazing panelists will be ready to assist you. Additionally, with Slido, we are going to be launching a few poll questions throughout the presentation, and we want to make sure you're ready to participate, to ask questions, to answer those questions, and submit your own questions as well. So you can go ahead and scan that QR code on your screen with your mobile device, or log in directly through your through our ICE live streams page. We're also going to be launching a Slido survey at the end of the live stream, and we would really appreciate it if you can just lend us 1 minute of your time to fill it out. Your feedback is valuable to us, and we always look forward to reading your amazing comments. Also, for your convenience, you can find a list of ICE resources on the left side of your Slido window. And one important note about Slido is that it's only available to the live audience. So if you're catching this session on demand at a later time, the poll questions and the question submission will not be active for you. So it's just something to keep in mind as you're watching it later on. And finally, I'd like to share some of our upcoming ICE events. One quick little note is that we've had a recent date changes to our coming 2 events for the month of April and May. So our next session is going to be ICE update on Microsoft Security Identifiers, and that is now scheduled for Tuesday, April 22nd at 8 a.m. Pacific time. And then the next session after that for the month of May, we're going to have ICE certificates with Let's Encrypt. That's going to be on Tuesday, May 27th. We invite you to register for these next few sessions if you haven't done so already. You can register using the short link on your screen, or you can find it on the left-hand side of your Slido window resources. All right, so without any further delay, I am now going to turn it over to our speaker, Thomas, to get us started and lead us into the presentation. So Thomas, good morning, and hope you're ready to dive in to our topic today. I'm going to
Yes,
go
thank
ahead
you,
and
Rigo.
I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you, and please take it away whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Thomas Howard, and I'm here to talk with you about ICE Data Connect Deep Dive. The idea here is we want to talk about Data Connect, which is actually a feature that's been around for a while now, since ICE 3.2. And the reason we want to talk about it is because I think we spend a lot of time in our webinars talking about configuration and not so much operations. And so I wanted to spend this time to really get into the operations of it, because that is something that you're going to spend a lot of your time doing after it's initially configured, of course. But we have some, I would say, some limitations in some of the ICE reporting and dashboards and things that I want to go through and tell you why I think ICE Data Connect is a great solution to this, and why we built it into the product. It is basically an open database connector that uses SQL, and specifically Oracle's PL/SQL. We're going to go through some subtleties of those, show you how to use it, show you how to enable it, and of course run a bunch of scripts and things to show you how to really get some of the data you're looking for, and show you how to format some things. And I've got some different custom Python scripts I want to show you that you can use. So this is going to be something that's going to take you from basic beginner stuff all the way through to very advanced Python. If it's not something you're interested in, I think this is a great way to start using Python with ICE. And it's like I said, this is Data Connect, where we have all these tables of data inside of ICE with all your operational data and your configuration data. And we want to be able to extract it out programmatically. And the way we do that is with Data Connect. It allows you to have an ODBC connector that you can run from Python or Excel or Power BI or even Splunk. There's lots of different ways that you can connect and to extract that data out of ICE. The other thing I want to note here is that while typically you run REST APIs against the ICE primary administration node, this is something that runs on the MNT node, because all the data, all that operational data we keep logging in your deployment goes to the monitoring and troubleshooting node, not the primary administration node. So I just wanted to remind you of that, because I think some people may forget that, and they may try to connect to the primary administration node. And it may happen to be also your primary MNT node as well in your deployment if it's a small deployment. But if you have a larger deployment, it's going to be a separate node. So I just want to remind people of that little detail. Like I said, we have talked about Data Connect before in a variety of different places, and we even have some configuration guides out there for you done by some of our awesome TAC engineers. So if you do want to spend a little bit more time getting to know this and see some different introductions, see how to integrate it with Splunk or other tools, I encourage you to take a look at some of those resources off the iceberg for Data Connect. So when we get started, first thing I wanted to do is do a Slido poll and understand how many of you have actually tried Data Connect. Have you ever used it? Is your first time seeing it? Maybe you use it all the time. Yeah, that's kind of what I was expecting. And that's why we're here today, right? Okay, good. We do have some basic users. I love it. Okay, the people that tried and gave up, yeah, I'm hoping to get you over that hump today as well. Okay. Yeah. All right, we're going to keep this poll open, but I'm not surprised by this at all. This is exactly what I was expecting. And I want to get you guys, like I said, over that hump and actually have you using it. And oh, good. We got a few people that are loving it. I love it. Good. I love it too. That's why we're here today. Okay, good. Well, hopefully by the end of this session, we're going to totally change this graph. That's my goal today. So to get you started, we have in Cisco's DevNet a Data Connect page where we talk about the different aspects of it and how you can get started with it. And we even include some example queries down here if you want to go see how to do some basic queries with it. And that's what I'm also going to show you here today. If you want to see how you can really customize it. This is an example of one of the views or tables inside of Data Connect. And what this allows you to do is basically see on the left-hand side all the tables that you have available at your disposal that you can query. And I will remind you that Data Connect is read-only. Okay, so you cannot use these database queries to update the tables at all. You can only read from them. Again, this is about getting data out, about using it for operational purposes. It's not for configuration. Okay, so all this stuff is for reading only. And all these tables exist. And then you can see basically a table of all the columns, their data types in here, and a quick description. Some of them are fairly redundant, but I think it's pretty obvious what a lot of these things are. And you just want to run some queries and see for yourself what some of these values are. And that's what we're going to do. The other caveat to this that I like to mention is that there's two types of ODBC clients. One is called a thin client and one is called a thick client. And when I started playing with Data Connect for the first time, I got really frustrated by it because all these ODBC clients have so many libraries that you have to install, or some of them you have to buy them. I thought it was really ridiculous. I thought there had to be a better way. And that's honestly why I went out and I made my own Python script because it's quick, easy, and free. So I like that a lot. And I thought other people like you could use this as well, rather than having to go out and buy some kind of an ODBC client or tool. So some of the operations are going to be limited with a thin client. And one of them that I found has been the timestamp time zone data type. So anytime we query a table that has a field or a column with the timestamp time zone, the thin client isn't going to be able to read that column. And our workaround is simply to not use that column. We just use the timestamp one below it here. It's just perfectly fine. I honestly don't know why that is, but it's just one of the things that I've found when playing with this. So we're gonna use Python when we do this, and the Oracle DB is a package in Python that by default has the thin client, but there is an option to use a thick client. We're not going to get into that today because, again, it's an extra process, and I just want to keep it simple just to get you guys started on this today. So the instructions that are there for Data Connect show you a lot of different ways, but it's really geared towards developers because we expected that it would be developers that go and want to use this kind of stuff. But I'm a more practical kind of person. I do have some software experience, but like I said, these tools, I don't really want to use these tools. I like the Python code, but the Python code example that's given in here uses some libraries that it makes it really hard using certificates and all this other stuff. It was way too difficult. So I was able to go out and find the Oracle DB package and make it a lot simpler for you. And that's what we're going to be doing today. But I did want to find out what kinds of tools are you going to be using with Data Connect potentially. What tools do you use with ODBC? Python? Okay, good. That's what I was hoping. Power BI, yeah, that's a popular one as well, because these are really easy to get started. Yeah, DB Visualizer. Okay, so some of these, like I said, they're already documented out there on the Data Connect site. But I like using Python because it gives me a lot of flexibility in terms of the queries I want to run, in terms of how, especially when you want to script them all together. Yeah, Excel. Okay, good. So those instructions are out there for you if you want to see Excel or Oracle SQL DB Visualizer. But I'm going to show you how quick and easy it is with Python today. So good. I'm glad we're all here today trying to learn Python. This is fantastic. All right. So like I said, typically you guys are out there configuring what we like to call objects inside of ISE, right? Whether it's devices or users or certificates or policies, things like that. And so we've spent a lot of the webinar time covering those kinds of things. But now that you've got all that stuff configured, you have users coming in authenticating. How are they actually using it? And so what we're looking for is really understanding, what are some of the errors we're seeing? What are some of the usages or the trends we're seeing with different policies, policy sets? Maybe you're even interested in the system performance with CPU utilization and things like that. You really just want to see, how the system is being used. Maybe a part of it is erroneously being used, and you want to minimize that. So you got to discover it and then work to try and minimize it and measure that over time. And I think one of the biggest areas where we get questions, honestly, is about sessions and license utilization. So that's something that we're not going to give you a full report on your licensing consumption today. We are going to get into your sessions a little bit. And I will tell you that ISE 3.5, we're hopefully going to address the licensing trend issues. We're actually going to build a report inside of ISE for you finally to do your licenses. So we'll see. Hopefully that's going to be coming in 3.5. So I don't have to build it today. In terms of the Data Connect tables, or what they're called views, these are all the different tables that we have access to. And what I've done is I've kind of marked them with a little gear if it references configured information or if it's operational data. And the difference here, if you think about it, is, let's just take admin users. If you want to get a list of your admin users and you want to run a report against all of your admin users, you need to know which ones have been configured in the system. So that's why we have an admin users table. And same thing for something like network devices. If you wanted to run a bunch of queries about your network devices, then you would need to know, well, what are all the devices that have been configured in the system? In fact, I have a customer I met with last week that was asking, I would like to know, when's the last time we heard from every single network device that's configured in ISE? Because if there's some we haven't heard from, I want to be able to delete them out of the system, right? So that's a great example of a query that you can do that's not actually built into ISE anywhere. So that's what you can do with these different things. And then, of course, you can use metrics for a query like that. Obviously, you want to iterate over all the network devices, but then to find out when's the last time you actually got an authentication for it, that's when you would use something like the radius authentications table, which has the operational data with all the authentications in it. And we're going to go through a bunch of examples of that. Oh, good. People have already been responding. So I was hoping to find out what are the kinds of queries people wanted to know. So transactions per second, that's a great one. And last time I had authenticated, that's exactly what I was just talking about, right? So that's perfect. Licensing over time, yep, that's a big one. Yeah, what different data sources are being used, that's a great one. Authentications and sponsors, posture, yeah, license usage, of course, that comes up a lot. Yeah, so these are all excellent examples. So this is exactly what I was expecting. And so we're going to go through some of these and try to show you how to do just that. And I put together a list of my own frequently asked queries because I kind of expected you guys would be doing some of these. And I just wanted to show you the typical things people are looking for is we do want to group information, whether it's system health, you want to see a trend over time, or if we want to know what's the total of something, especially over a period of time, like we just saw how many transactions per second, right? That's a great example. License consumption comes up a lot. And then maybe you want to know how many active sessions you have in a given time. That's directly related to license consumption. Maybe you want to know what's my typical session length, or when was something last seen, whether it's an endpoint or a device, right? So all these kinds of things are just things that people want to know, and there isn't necessarily a direct query inside of the ISE interface for that. So speaking of queries in the ISE interface, the reason why we have Data Connect is because there's so much data inside of ISE, especially if you have a large deployment. And some of it's just not really easily accessible here. So for example, you don't see any trends in the dashboard. In the live logs, you're limited to only the latest 100 records, right? And what if I wanted to see 1,000 or 10,000? I wanted to filter through those, right? And I wanted to go beyond the last 24 hours. And I don't want just a CSV or a PDF. I want to use JSON because I want to take that data and I want to do something else with it somewhere else. And then if I want to run a query, there's so many details inside of here that I would love to do a query on, but I don't actually have the ability to query all those attributes inside the ISE live log details. So then if you're inside of the reports, like I said, we talked about the details, but then there is an ability to do a more customized query. But again, you're still limited in how you interact with the system to do it. And it's not really repeatable. I mean, you should be able to save some of these off, but it's just, if you want to do it at scale and you want to iterate over, like I said, a bunch of your admin users or a bunch of your network devices, this really isn't the way to do it. So we need a little bit better way. Now, I will say that we've done a lot to improve getting you access to this data using a new feature starting in ISE 3.2 called Log Analytics. And basically, we're starting to add a lot of new dashboards that do have some of that trending information, and they do have some great visualizations for you. But it's going to take some learning to do it in the dashboard and to save those things off. And we are adding things. I know there's been a new one in ISE 3.4 for posture, for services, things like that. So we're going to keep adding dashboards in here and improving it. And I'm hoping over time you're going to actually see these dashboards be the main dashboard you see when you log into ISE, but that might take a few more releases before we get there. But we're trying to build that out in Log Analytics. And finally, the big one that everybody asks for, right? Where's my licensing consumption history so I can make a purchasing decision or know when I'm going to hit my limits? So like I said, that hopefully is going to be coming in ISE 3.5. So you'll be able to finally see that. Now we do have another set of monitoring APIs using REST. So you can do some basic queries. The limitation here is that, number one, it's only XML based. We haven't updated it to do JSON or any other data. And frankly, if you look at some of these options for the queries, right? You can query a MAC address or maybe by the PSN or the network device IP address, but it's not going to give you every single session ever created. It's only going to give you active sessions, or it's only going to give you a specific user sessions that are active right now. It's really not comprehensive, and it's not that robust query language like you get with SQL. And the other thing I'll say is, if you've ever done REST queries, typically if you have to do a bunch of them, they're really slow because of the number of round trips. Whereas SQL, you can specify one query and just get a huge data dump. And so that's why I like using SQL, is because it ends up being just orders of magnitude faster than anything you can do with a REST query for a large amount of data. So what I like to do is let's actually show you how to get this thing enabled. I promise you it's really easy. All you got to do is head into Administration and Settings, choose Data Connect, turn it on, give it a password, and it is a bit limited. You can't use an @ sign, and you can't use an exclamation point. So choose your password carefully. It's kind of annoying, but those are two characters you can't use. And then I do the maximum password expiry because I don't want to deal with having my password expire when I'm doing queries. So I go for 300 the full time. What it's going to do is it's basically going to generate a hard-coded username, which is Data Connect. It's going to tell you the name of your host, your port, and a service name. Service name is basically the Oracle database has a service that we're going to connect to, and for whatever reason, it's called CPM10. And so when we create our query to connect, we're going to use these different parameters to do that. So most of these are hard-coded. Really, all you need to know is your host name and your password. It's really that simple. All this other stuff is just hard-coded. If you did want to enable this via a REST API, we also have that available for you. We're not going to cover that today. I do have a script that does this in my GitHub repository, which I'll show you if you want to play with it, but we're not going to go through and do that today. So one more thing before we get started is, what's your SQL skill level? Have you ever done SQL? Or like, Thomas, what's SQL? I don't even know. Okay, good. We have some people that know it. That's a good start. That's helpful today. We are going to go through the basics, but I don't want to scare anybody off with SQL. So I think everybody should know it. Yeah, good. Okay, that's where I was hoping we'd be today. If we had any advanced people, they might be able to help me with some queries. I was kind of hoping for that. Oh, we got a few people. Okay. All right, good. All right, well, SQL is structured query language. We're going to cover that for you right now. But good, I'm glad to see this is the sweet spot where I was hoping people would be. Hopefully we can teach you some things today. Good. So, like I said, structured query language is SQL. And the idea here is all of our data we put into a giant table. You have different fields or columns across the top, just like Excel. It's just one giant Excel spreadsheet, right? Works the same way. And you can have lots of different tables. And what we want to do ultimately is we want to select a table with, or select columns from a table. And then we typically want to filter the rows using some kind of a condition, a Boolean condition, when we say where. So where a certain condition is met. And then from that subset that gets returned, we want to typically order the columns by certain, either alphabetically or numerically. We want to sort them or order them. And then a lot of times we're going to get so much data back, it's just overwhelming. We don't want to see it all. And so just like when you use a website and you get your data paged, you get 25 results or 100 results at a time. We want to limit the number of results that we get back at a time, so we're not dumping millions of rows unnecessarily to the screen and using up unnecessary resources. Another thing you can do is group by. So if you want to summarize or what's called aggregate data by some parameters, and you want to average it, or you want to total it or sum it, anything like that, that's called a group by, and we're going to do some of that as well. And then there's just sometimes you want to count the number of something, find out the maximum, or you need to do some actual some string manipulation to make it presentable and interesting on the screen. So we're going to do some of those things as well. One thing to note about SQL is it's case insensitive, so that you can write it uppercase, mixed case, doesn't really matter. It all just works. The other thing is that I like to put comments in my code, and you're going to see some of that later on. And comments start with a dash dash. So this is a language that's been around for, I think, like almost 50 years or something. So it's quite old in how it works. And so using dashes was the way to do comments, I guess, back in 1970s or something. And there's many different flavors of SQL. Like I said, ISE actually has an Oracle database that it connects to. And so Oracle's flavor of SQL is called PL/SQL, or procedural language SQL. So these are some things I just wanted to kind of start off, let you know what you're about to see and kind of how things work. But what I want to do is actually get our environment going and start doing some queries. That's what we're here for, right? And to do that, well, actually, what we're going to do, we're going to get our environment set up in a terminal because we want to run Python. I use VS Code to do my coding. because it's a really nice IDE. It has coloring and all kinds of stuff, so you can see your code nicely. And then something I'm going to do a little bit differently today. Never done this before, but we're going to use something called Jupyter. Jupyter is something called a notebook that lets you run documentation and code together in this interactive way. And I thought that was going to be really helpful for you guys. So if you've not seen Jupyter before, I think this is a really good way to learn Python if you haven't learned Python yet. So let's go through this and I'll show you basically how it works. So all my code today is already posted for you on my GitHub repository called ISE Python scripts. This is something I've been contributing to for several years now with different scripts and things. And the one we're going to use today, I call IceQL. That's kind of my play on words for SQL, but IceQL, right? The idea here is when we want to run just a simple query in ICE, wouldn't it be great if I could just say, run IceQL with some SQL query? And that's exactly what this little script is meant to do. And I'll show you how it's built. It's actually really simple. Oracle does all the work. It's pretty straightforward. So if you want to run this, you can run it against, you can actually put a query straight into the command line inside of double quotes, or I've actually built a lot of queries for you already. And some of these are quite complex. Some of them are actually really simple, but they have a lot of things are commented out, so you can play with them to your heart's desire. So we're going to go through these, and I'll show you what they are. And you know, I just wanted to give you guys lots of examples as I play with it. I've kind of built some of these things for my own needs. So let's get started with this. Not that. We want to go here. All right. So I just have a terminal and nothing in here. So I'm totally starting from scratch. And what I wanted to do is I need to get my repository. We're going to download this code onto my computer right now. And so if you go inside of this repository, you'll actually see that we can download this GitHub clone right here. And hopefully you guys have Git installed on your computer. If not, well, then that's why you want to download the zip file and unpack it and do it that way. That's another option for you. But we're going to do it the cool kids way. And we're going to do a git clone. Oh, look at that. It's already there for me in my history. So I'm just going to go ahead and clone that out. It just downloaded the entire repository to my local computer here in a directory called ISE Python scripts. So if I cd into that and I look, there's all my code. There's a lot of different things here that we're not going to use. So I'm just going to remove some of these ICE scripts that I don't care about. I don't want to confuse you guys today. I want to keep it simple. So we're just going to do that. And then just got a few things left here. So the next thing I want to do is I need to install my Python environment. So the way I do that is I'm just going to run a command here. I know you guys don't want to see me type, so I'm just going to paste it in. We're going to install a bunch of Python packages, which are inside of this requirements.txt file. And this is going to take a little while, but it's totally worth it. And I'll tell you why. So we're running what's called a Python virtual environment, and it's done with this tool called pip environment. Pip is basically a package manager for Python. And we're downloading these packages that we use because everyone's already written a lot of code for us. We're going to reuse that code to make our lives easy. And we do it in a special virtual environment. Just like you have a virtual machine, we have a virtual Python environment. And the reason why we do this is because when you're playing with all this different code from all these different repositories that are fun scripts to play with, you're going to get all these dependencies and all these crazy packages. And at some point, you're going to confuse yourself because you've got so much random garbage on your computer. It's going to make your life really hard. And so rather than have kind of everything dumped into one big pile of packages, it's much nicer to keep it constrained by a particular GitHub repository or a script or something like that. And so that's exactly what we've done is we've downloaded a whole bunch of packages. So I'm going to go ahead and launch into that virtual environment. I'm going to run pip in shell and hit return. Okay, so now I've launched into my virtual environment. And if I do pip list, this says, show me all the Python packages I've installed in my virtual environment. So here it is. What I just wanted to show you real quick, I've got a bunch of different things from all these different scripts that I've written. So some of these aren't going to apply today. So don't think you need every last one of these for what we're doing. But we are going to be using Oracle DB. That's the big one. That's our ODBC client package that we're going to be using. Pandas is a way of doing a lot of data analytics and stuff. Pip, obviously, something we use for downloading packages. We want to be able to do YAML files for output. If we want to be able to do some HTTP requests, we have that library. I want to show stuff in tables, so we got the tabulate package. And I think those are the main ones. So the next thing we want to do is we want to be able to connect to our database. But I want to show you, first of all, if I want to launch into VS Code, or it's called VS Codium, that's the one I use. It's basically the open source version. This is my VS Code. And I'll make it a little larger so you can see everything here. So basically, again, this is a copy of the repository. And inside of here, just to show you, I've got a bunch of different things that I've done. But here's all those SQL files. And for example, admin users. So this is a really simple SQL query where we select all the columns from the admin users table and only give me the first 10. We're just going to keep it really short and simple. And then we have a bunch of other queries that we could potentially run. One of the most popular ones, my favorite, honestly, to get started with is the node list. The node list is essentially show me all of my ICE nodes in my deployment. And there's a lot of different columns here, or fields, right? And honestly, these are the only ones that I typically care about. I don't really care about a lot of this other stuff. And so I'm going to show you this one, and we're going to pull from that table, and we're going to sort by the host name. So we'll show you what that looks like. And I just want to show you, if you did it in VS Code, you have a way to do it here like this. And then the other thing we're going to do is we're going to be running something called the IceQL notebook. And you can run it in VS Code, or I'm actually going to run it in Jupyter Notebook. But I wanted just to show it to you here because depending upon the environment you want to work in, it'll work in either one. You do have to install an extension inside of VS Code to do it. But you can run this notebook. And the cool thing about these notebooks is everything is basically markdown cells. You can actually add pictures. Like this is, again, markdown. You can actually drag and drop a picture into it. And then you can run Python code straight inside of your notebook. You have to choose a Python environment, which fortunately we've got our virtual environment that we've already instantiated here. And oh, we got to run the IPy package. I forgot to install that one. But once we do that, it's taking a little while. While that's happening, we're going to go over to here. And I want to go ahead and run Jupyter Notebook. If I can spell notebook. There we go. And what this is going to do is it's actually going to launch into my web browser a Jupyter Notebook. So this is the main interface, and I'm going to make it a little larger so you can see the text a little bit better. And here's that same notebook. And it's IPyNB, which is Interactive Python Notebook. That's what IPyNB means. If I select it, it will open the notebook in here. And just like we saw in VS Code, it's going to run it here. I can edit the cells and do everything. So if I want to run this now, I'm going to hit Shift Enter, and it will run this cell, and it runs it just like a normal Python code. There are other things you can do, which is called cell magic, which we're going to use. The idea here is these are like shortcuts or macros that we can use. And depending on things we want to do, we can run shell commands. We can set environment variables. We can install packages with pip, all these different things. So in this case, I can actually show you what a particular SQL command looks like. I'm going to load that SQL file from my SQL directory. Where'd it go? There it is. So I just loaded that by providing the path to that file. If I want to see my current working directory, there it is. If I want to set some environment variables, I can just hit Shift Enter, and you can see I'm running these commands inside of here. And so it's a way of interacting with this notebook. So somebody can create a notebook, and just like I've done for you, and you can download this and you can run these exact same commands. So I'm going to set some environment variables for my ISEQL script using these set environment parameters. And then if I want to verify that environment variable, I can just use the environment macro or cell magic. And you can see that I've correctly set my environment variable for ICE Data Connect password to that. And then I can do some other interesting things with shell magic. So the idea here is I can run other shell commands. Like if I want to see what the date is, I can do that. If I want to get a list of directories or what's a list of contents in my current directory, I can do that. And so you see here's all those same files that we saw in my directory. And you can actually see this is the virtual environment folder where all those Python packages got installed. The other thing we're going to do is we can save the same data to a variable. So this is interesting. I can actually run a command in the shell, and then I can use it in Python. So I can now run a Python command to print out the value, and there it is. And you'll notice that it's actually an array of a string, and that's because you can get multiple lines in the output from this, and so maybe you need to iterate over different lines of that output. So it's shown in an array, which is in these square brackets. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview of Jupyter. I know it's very quick and might be kind of wondering, why is he showing us this? The reason why is because we can now go through a whole bunch of commands very quickly. I don't have to type it all because there's a lot of stuff we want to show you guys, starting with Oracle DB. So I told you Oracle DB is Oracle's Python package for working with ODBC and their database. And so we've actually already done the installation, but I can run the install again. I don't need to. I'm going to skip that because that took a long time. But what I did want to show you here is this script. This is essentially the core of my ISEQL script. I import some packages, mainly Oracle DB. I set some variables, which you saw I did also from my environment variable, but I'm going to set them manually here inside my code. If you want to use a self-signed certificate with your ICE node, you want to connect, you actually need to do some SSL, so the SSL context to ignore it so that you don't care about an SSL cert. You got to tell the Oracle client a bunch of parameters, which again, most of these are all hard-coded for you. You don't have to do anything. The only thing we're caring about really is the address of the MNT node and the password. Everything else is static. And then when we want to do a query, we send the parameters into the Oracle database. We connect with those parameters to get a connection, and then we execute a query. It's that hard. So I'm just going to configure this. This is a Python function that we're going to run. We're going to put that in memory, and then I can now run the query. And there it is. So what we just did is we ran a query, and it's kind of hard to see the output, but I'm going to change it up a little bit. Oh, actually, I can't do it here. This is why I built ISEQL, is because if you have all these columns and it's comma separated, basically it's a CSV by default, right? It's really hard to read all this stuff. And so what I did is I built ISEQL because I want to be able to see it in a more human readable way. And I want to be able to run my own custom queries instead of having to write them in functions like this. So from the command line, if you want to see how it works, you can run the ISEQL help option, and it will actually show you how to do all this. And it shows you, setting it with environment variables and some example queries that you can run. And if you don't want to use an environment variable, then you can go ahead and use usernames and passwords and things like that. But all the details are in here. The formatting the different ways that you can format the output is in here. And so let's do it. We're going to run that IceQL command from the CLI, and we're going to select all of the nodes in ICE from our ICE deployment, or what's in the node list. So we're going to run that, and there it is. Exactly the same thing as we saw up here, only I've run it in my IceQL script, and my IceQL script has some extra code in it that lets me change the output format to make it more interesting. So now it's formatted as a table, but maybe this is a little too, still too much information. So what I want to do is, let me rerun this. And I'm going to just take the first few columns like this. I'm just going to put it right in here. And I'm going to run the same thing, and I'm going to do it in a table format now. Let's rerun it. Okay, much nicer, right? Now this is much easier to read. So what I did, as I said, I'm going to select specific columns from the node list, and I'm going to output it as a table. So now that makes it much, much easier to read and understand and start to play with it. So that's why I do that. Now I can do a raw SQL query right here on the command line, or I can actually run a save command down here. So if I want to do that, I can just run it from this query in my SQL folder that I showed you guys earlier. And there, I have some more output. It doesn't scroll very well in here. This is one reason why I like to use VS Code, is it lets me scroll horizontally. Otherwise, I'd have to, there we go. If I make it really small, you can kind of see it's a really cool table. This is actually showing me my radius authentications by policy set, or basically the authorization rule. It basically shows me my average response time, my maximum response time, how many have passed, how many have failed, and a percentage of failures. So it's a really cool way to summarize that data, right? So this is some of the cool things that you can do once you start writing your own SQL scripts. So I'm going to make this a little larger for you again, and we're going to start running a bunch more of these. Before that, I just wanted to show you what that crazy SQL script looks like. So I did the cat command to show you the output of it. And you can see I'm selecting several columns. I'm doing some manipulations on them. I told you about the to-care option, show me the maximum. This actually lets me substitute a null value for something if it's unknown or null. And then I want to count some other columns. And then all these I've just commented out. But if you wanted to customize this to your own needs, you could just simply uncomment one of these columns, and it would show up in your data as well. I also have ways to filter the data. I'm currently, that table that I just generated is for the last 30 days, but maybe I wanted to see who's been hitting my policy in the last hour, or the last minute, or the last number of seconds. So you can just quickly comment or uncomment these, and it will filter it by those as well. So I try to have some of these common things that I do. As I'm playing around, I may want to customize the queries, and rather than have to manually type it, I can just comment and uncomment a specific row and get that data. So I will mention that one of the other options is self-signed certs. So if I want to make sure that I am verifying the certs, I can set an environment variable to do that. And then if I run my command, I can actually, you'll see that I actually get an error. It can't connect to the database because it doesn't trust the certificate, because I'm saying I must trust it. And if it's not trusted, it's going to fail. So what I can do instead is I can override it with an option, the -i or -- insecure option, and I'm able to still run my query. And I can go back to the verify false, set that environment variable, so I don't have to use the -i, and now I can run that query again, and my query runs because I'm using the ICE verify. So some other things we can do is, I wanted to tell you about performance. I've already shown you how I can change the output formats, but the problem is some of these, if you download too much data, it takes a long time to stream it to the screen. And so let me go ahead and do that right now. If I want to show you radius accounting, let's see how long this takes. So what I did is I counted all of the rows of radius accounting. I have about 56,000 rows in my database right now. If I wanted to just dump those all out, it's going to take a long time. So I'm going to limit it to the first 5,000 rows only. So let's do that. Let's show you what that looks like. Okay, so it's huge, right? It's really ugly. Oh my God, I really shouldn't have done that. It's it's just horrible. So let me see if I scroll all the way down. Okay, there we go. Whew. I really shouldn't have done that. And so if you were, it only took 2.5 seconds to do. That's not too bad. If I were to run that same thing and I wanted to do it in a table, notice nothing's coming out right now. That's because it has to buffer all of the output, and then it finally dumps it out, and it does it in a really long, oh, thank you. This time it put in a little frame, so it made it easier, but it took a little longer. And if I look at the end, oh yeah, see, it was too much for it. It couldn't do it. If I run this in my actual, if I run this in my terminal, oh, I can't do it here. I'd have to quit and do it. If I ran it at my terminal, it would work, and it would be just fine. But it's going to take longer. It's going to take about 15 to 20 seconds to do that same query, because that's to buffer the output, format it, all that kind of stuff. So just be aware that when you're getting the data, you may want to limit the number of rows so you don't, flood your screen with stuff. And you may need to be wary of the format type that you use, because it can take a long time to process it. So the next thing I wanted to show you is all the tables that you have at your disposal. I showed you some slides of that earlier. And so there is a command that you can use. So if you wanted to get a list of all the views available in Data Connect, this is the query you can use. I just wrote this out. So one of the macros is if you want to be able to write some SQL data out to this file. I just did it. And it said, okay, I wrote it out, and I overwrote the file. I can now run that command, and here's a list of all those tables that I was showing you earlier, right? So if you're curious, like, oh, I wonder what the radius authentications one is, or I wonder what the pxgrid direct data looks like, you can start to play with those tables and see what they look like. The other thing I mentioned earlier is case and sensitivity. So all of these are all the same query. They're just written in different case. This is all lowercase, this is all uppercase, and this is title case. So it doesn't really matter which one you use. So here I'm using all lowercase. We're going to run a command, and there it is. It doesn't matter. I can take the uppercase and use that one instead and substitute it in here and run it, and it runs all the same, right? So just keep in mind, it's case insensitive. The one trick is when you're doing conditions, if you write conditions to filter on data, those conditional values will be case sensitive because it's whatever the data is inside. So if Thomas has a capital T or Thomas has a lowercase t, when you're trying to match on my username, it will matter when you do that query. So keep that in mind. This is just another example. If I wanted to show you, we're going to match on the table name radius authentications. We're going to get no data out because this is all lowercase, and inside of this table, it's actually uppercase. So if I have to say radius authentications, and if I rerun that, I should now get data out. So I'm actually seeing, show me all the table columns for the table name radius authentications. So if you wanted to see what are all the fields in radius authentications, here's a query you could use to do something like that. So there's a lot of different things we can do in terms of queries. With select, right? If you just use the star, it shows all of the fields, but that can be a lot, right? Look at all that data. There's so much stuff here. It's really hard to make sense of that. So you're probably going to want to specify, you want to select specific columns to make use of them in a more sensible way. So be aware of that detail. And the other one is you want to limit it. You saw earlier how I tried to get a bunch of data and it was like 5,000 columns, right? It's just way too much. And so that's where being able to fetch, sometimes you just need to see one row just to see what some data looks like. Or maybe you want to see 5, 10, 100 rows to make it interesting. So we can do that with radius accounting. We can say, I don't want to see 5,000. I only want to see the next 10, right? And so here's 10 rows, but look, we still have a lot of different columns we need to select from. And so you can see how these queries are going to get kind of complex pretty quick. And so what we want to do is we want to start using selects, and we want to start manipulating some of that data so that it looks more interesting. And starting with timestamps. I think timestamps, everything in the database has a timestamp log, right? And so one of the most frequent ways to filter and organize it is by the timestamp. So if we have something like a timestamp test that we want to do, what I did is I took the standard radius accounting table and I did a whole bunch of different timestamp formats just to show you how we could manipulate it. So I'm going to run this. And it's a little bit large. Let me make it a little smaller. There we go. This is the standard timestamp format where it has the year, the month, the day, hour, minute, second, and then it has what are called fractional seconds. And you can see it does it up to, basically millionths of a second, but the last 3 digits are always zeros. And so really ICE only records it to thousandths of a second or milliseconds. So it doesn't make sense to waste those 3 characters. So maybe you want to use this format. You want to take the timestamp and you want to format it in this way. And this FF3 means use fractional seconds up to 3 digits. And that gives you your milliseconds. So that's what this one is. And maybe you don't care about milliseconds. Sometimes a single second is perfectly fine. And so you can do it just to the seconds format using this format. And the HH24 means I want to use the 24-hour field, so I can filter that way. Or you can just do it by a date, and you can see year, month, day works out that way. Sometimes you may want to do what's called truncation of a timestamp. You want to truncate it to a day, or you want to truncate it to a minute. And what that does is, rather than just eliminating the time field, it keeps the time field, but it zeroes it all out. It truncates it down to just zeros. And same thing if we wanted to truncate it to the minute. You can see that the seconds are all zeroed out and you only have the minutes in there. So this is useful if you want to do some kind of an aggregation by hour or minute or day, right? If you want to do that, you can say, I want to group it by these hours, minutes, or days. So we're going to show some examples of that here in a little bit, but I just want to give you guys some quick examples. The other thing you can do is functions. And one of the most popular functions is counting. So sometimes you just want to tell me how many of something exists. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of my macros to run a shell command with IceQL. And this is a more complex command where I'm selecting some data. I'm going to be counting some of the fields, and I'm then going to group it by the timestamp. And you notice I'm going to group it by the day. Oops. I'm going to group it by the day, where I'm only using YYMMDD, and I'm going to sort it by the timestamp. So let's do it. There it is. So you can see I now have my timestamp. It's year, month, day. And then you can see these are for all the days. So this database has been running since this ICE deployment has been going since September 1st of last year. And these are all of the radius accounting starts, stops, interims, and then other values that I received in this database. And it's the total number per day that I received. And so you can see it just goes through and it calculates all that for me. You can see what's been happening in the database. So this is a neat way to kind of summarize your data. Now, something else is you can use call null value, where if you have a column that has an empty or null value, you can actually substitute it with some of the default value. So for this one, I have a null value on the account session time. So again, we're going to go back to Radius Accounting, and we're going to do it on the account session time. If we don't receive an account session time on a particular session, we're just going to use 0. Keep it really simple. So let's run this. And account session time. So I've got, what I did is I did the account session time as a length, and I did a length with 0, called it length 0. So you can see if I don't specify the 0, these are the nulls. It's just kind of a gap in the data. Whereas if I use it with a 0, if I specify the null value of 0, it actually puts the zeros in there for me, right? So that's something that you can do if you don't want to have just an empty field. You want to know that something's there. I could change it just as easily to a dash. If I wanted to say, don't put a 0 there, put a dash there for no value. Oh, invalid number. Okay, maybe you can't do that. Sorry. Guess it's got to be a 0. Never mind. This is what happens when you do it live and didn't test it. All right, there we go. A lot of times you may want to truncate strings or text on the screen. So one of the great examples of this is there's a database table called failure code cause, and it is massive. Like, look at the lengths of these strings, right? These things are huge, and it just kind of scrolls off. I can't scroll it horizontally, but oh my God, there's so much there. So I have to scroll way down. This is where VS Code's kind of nice because it makes it easier to scroll horizontally. What I'm going to do instead of having all those long lines is I'm actually going to truncate them. When the length is over 70 characters, I'm going to get a substring, the first 69 characters, and then I'm going to concatenate an ellipses to the end to show that it's been trimmed. So I'm going to run that. And now look at that. Oh, so much cleaner. So it was only 2 columns, but we couldn't see it all. There was just so much data there. But really, we get most of the information we need from that first, looks like, 60, 70 characters. So that's really all we needed. We didn't need all the other data. If there's something that you really wanted to, make it a little bit larger to fill in the space, but otherwise being able to truncate that and then concatenate the little ellipses on there is a nice touch, so you know that it's been truncated. Oh boy. Filtering. So there's lots of ways you can filter your data. You can use the comparisons like greater than, less than, equal to. One of the common ways is checking for strings using, it's actually like is the name of the operator. And then there's even a regex like for checking patterns that way. And of course you can combine your queries together in ands and ors. And so if we just did radius accounting by sessions, let's go ahead and, oops, not that one. Sorry. This one. There we go. This one is actually grouping sessions together by the session ID. And so it's doing a lot of comparisons, but it's really nice because it shows you all the events for a specific accounting session ID. So if we had interims and other things in here for radius accounting, it would show everything for this one particular session. And you can go ahead and modify that SQL query, and you can do it for different session strings that you're trying to find out what was happening. Another one is if we wanted to look for all of Thomas's network devices. So I could run this query where we're checking for the names of the devices like Thomas. So it starts with Thomas, and then the percentage is a wildcard. So you can see these are all of Thomas's devices in this ISE deployment. And then I provided just a whole bunch of different examples of those where conditions that you can use, because maybe you want to do it on a particular value. Maybe it's a numeric value. Maybe you're checking for a username or a device name. But timestamps, like I said, man, there's just so many different ways of doing timestamps. Maybe you want to check between a start date and an end date, or maybe you want to do it. Maybe you like to, it's easy to type it in this way. So you want to basically convert a string into a timestamp and do it for a time afterwards. There's just so many different ways to do it that I've provided a bunch of examples here for you guys to see how that would work. And if you try to combine it all together, if I want to see, show me everything Thomas has done on this device in the last 12 hours, right? So I can combine all those filters together, run it, and it's still the radius accounting table. So there's a lot of data there, but you can see these are all of the things that Thomas has done to authenticate to the network in the last 12 hours. So that's pretty cool. Last thing is sorting. You have ways of sorting because sometimes you want to sort ascending and other times you want to do it descending. I'm sorry, this is just the huge output on this, but basically you want to be able to sort chronologically with the timestamp, or maybe in this case, you want to sort by the response time. You want to find out, show me all the sessions with the highest amounts of response time, so you can sort that way. And can't really see in this view because there's just too much data here. But if you did it in VS Code, you'd be able to see this. So I was hoping to show you guys a bunch of these things. There's so much more to show. I've got so many different things in this playbook. I just don't have time to show you. Calculations, how to do radius accounting sessions. There's just so many different things. And there's even another script in here called ISE Data Connect, which lets you run lots of different queries. I wanted to show you real quick. If I quit out of here, I have ISE DC reports. ISE Data Connect, or ISE DC, is another Python script I wrote that basically allows you to run lots of different queries in a single batch. And I did it in this ISE DC reports. I just wanted to show you what that looks like real quick. So if I go into Codium and I show you the ISE DC reports, what I'm able to do is I have a bunch of queries up here that I can run. But the main thing is I can instantiate a single Data Connect client. And based off of that, I can now run a bunch of different queries all at once. So if I wanted to create an HTML report or any kind of report, I could run a whole bunch of queries in succession. So I've got a bunch of different ones I'm doing for radius authentications, radius accounting, network device groups, network devices. I can run all these at once. So let's do that real quick. ISE DC reports. It should be connecting. No, what's the problem? Oh, I think I needed to actually source. I didn't actually set my environment variables here. I only set it in my my notebook. So I want to run my ISE DC webinar environment variables. And now if I run it, let's see if this works. No, this is supposed to work. All right. I think the problem is I need to export a different ISE MNT value. Let's try that. Hopefully that's the issue. There we go. That was it. I was using I had the wrong host name value. But look, so see, I'm running all those queries all at once. And so if you want to be able to run a whole bunch of queries and dump a report, you can put them all together using that ISE Data Connect client with Python and just dump it all. You can run your reports daily, weekly, however often you need to do it, and you can slice and dice all your queries however you need to. So hopefully this is something that you're going to be able to use with Python. Hopefully this is easier than some of these other tools out there. I hope this has been a good introduction for you to all this. And Rigo, do we have any questions outstanding from the audience?
Hey, Thomas, thank you. So I'm looking at our panel here, and I don't see that we have any outstanding questions remaining from the audience. So it looks like
Okay.
our panelists did an amazing job in taking care of all of the questions. So I think we can go ahead and wrap up.
Okay.
But do you have any closing comments for our audience, Thomas, before we go ahead and close out?
I didn't, other than I just hope that you can kind of see, like, this is meant to be a deep dive, and there's so much more to this dive that we could have gone on today. Sorry we ran out of time, but there's a lot of good stuff. Hopefully use my code and make the best of it with however you need to.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the presentation for today. I just want to give you a big thanks, Thomas, for speaking about this topic with our audience today. I hope that everyone found great value in the information and resources that we share here today. I would also like to extend a very big thank you to each and every one of our panelists for lending a hand with the questions throughout the event. We really appreciate it. And for our attendees, if you do have any additional questions or would like to continue the conversation about today's topic, we do encourage you to participate in our online post-webinar discussion. The link to that discussion is available on your Slido screen on the left-hand side, where you can also access a handful of additional ICE resources for your convenience as well. And just one reminder that we have launched the Slido survey. So we would be so grateful if you can just take a minute and complete it and let us know how you like today's presentation. We always look forward to receiving your valuable feedback and reading all of your comments. So we hope that you can at least take a minute to fill it out for us. We would really, really appreciate it. And for those of you who are interested in revisiting this session, we will have the recording available for on-demand viewing within approximately 5 business days after today. And just a quick reminder that our next session is titled ICE Update on Microsoft Security Identifiers, and that's going to be coming up on Tuesday, April 22nd. And then following that session for the month of May, we're going to have ICE certificates with Let's Encrypt. That's going to be on May 27th. So we hope that you can join us for these upcoming sessions as well. Thanks again to our presenter, Thomas, to our panelists, and to all of our attendees for joining us here live. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you next time on the Cisco Learning Network.